November's presidential election has implications well beyond our country's borders. And a new piece in The Atlantic entitled "What Europe Fears" details how European leaders and NATO are preparing for the potential re-election of Donald Trump. And joining us now, the author of that piece, staff writer at The Atlantic, McKay Coppins. McKay, thank you for coming on this morning. So tell us what these leaders are saying.
You know, I was struck traveling through Europe and talking to all these leaders by two things. One is that they're watching the U.S. election very, very closely. Thomas Bagger, the state secretary in Germany, actually told me that in a year when billions of people around the world will have the opportunity to vote, the one election everyone in Europe cares about and is paying attention to is the American presidential election. The other thing that struck me is that almost every official I spoke to believed that Donald Trump was going to win again. And they say that with a sense of dread, in some cases bordering on panic, honestly. You know, the word that I heard most often in these interviews was existential. They said if Donald Trump comes back, you know, we made it through the first Trump term, right? And it took a toll on the transatlantic relationship, but they made it through. They said if he comes back, given what he's been saying about NATO, given what he's been saying about Russia, the war in Ukraine, they're really afraid that it will be the end of NATO and the beginning of a new stage of Russian aggression that Europe, frankly, isn't prepared for without America's support.
So, McKay, let's dive into that a little bit more. There's been, from President Macron of France in particular, this effort to try to make European more independent, or should we at least say less dependent on the U.S. In terms of our military and financial strength. What other steps are he and his fellow European leaders taking to try to, if you will, Trump-proof what they're doing right now ahead of his possible return?
Yeah, there have been a number of efforts recently proposed. One of them, as you mentioned, is, you know, developing defense autonomy in Europe in a way that would potentially channel funds away from NATO, which really does rely on America, and toward the European Defense Alliance. There's been talk of taking the responsibility for arming Ukraine, the literal logistical responsibility, out of America's hands and putting that in NATO's hands, because they don't know if a future Trump administration would abandon the war or not. And really the biggest change has been that a lot of European allies are spending a lot more now on their own defense. And this is one thing that, you know, Trump takes credit for. And I have to say a lot of the European officials I spoke to actually grudgingly gave him some credit for. They said, you know, Trump, by kind of being so vociferous about this issue that European allies aren't spending enough on defense, has sort of bullied a lot of these countries into spending more, but it's come at a cost. And that cost is that these European countries, while they are now spending more on collective defense, contributing more to NATO, also don't trust America as a long-term ally the way that they have for the last 75 years. And when America becomes an unpredictable power or a transactional power, that changes the entire global order in ways that I don't think we can predict right now.
Sure does.
Well, and we heard back in, I think it was 2018, 2019, Angela Merkel, in the Chancellor of Germany, saying we can no longer depend on the United States, basically with Trump, because he's so erratic. We're going to have to defend ourselves. It's something Macron has said as well. So it's damning with faint praise, Claire McCaskill, if Donald Trump's making them spend more money on defense, because they're spending more money on defense because they know they can't count on the United States in their minds if Donald Trump is president of the United States. McKay writes this also, that almost every official I spoke with believed that Trump is going to win. And I hear that an awful lot from Europe, and I hear it from across the world. I think, Claire, we should probably tell our friends not to bet too many euros or pounds or rubles on that fact, because what you see on TV may not be what ends up happening in voting booths for swing voters in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, those three states particularly, where really Biden has never been more than a point or two behind, and in many polls has been ahead in those three states. And those three states are incredibly important. McKay, I wanted to ask you about what's going on in Europe domestically in terms of their politics. We have seen in the United States populism and a really virulent strand of nationalism, anti-immigration that has really roiled our politics here. What is happening in that front in Europe? It looks from a distance that they're having some of the same issues internally within the conservative parties there, the anti-immigration, the populism. Is that something that Europe is also worried about?
Oh, no question. You know, the fear of Trump's return in Europe is of a piece with the fear of a broader rise of right-wing populism and nationalism across Europe. We've seen it in the UK. We've seen it in Italy. In Germany, the AfD party, which is the far-right party, there was one recent poll that found that 25% of Germans now identify with that party, and that's a pretty extreme party. So there's no question that throughout Western democracies, and really in Europe especially, we've seen a lot of the same forces that have contributed to Trump's rise. And so in some ways, the Europeans kind of understand Trump through that prism. Right? They're saying, you know, we get it. We have our own issues here. Some of our allies have elected leaders like Donald Trump. But it's different when it happens in America, because America is not only the linchpin of the NATO alliance, it is in a lot of ways seen as kind of the big brother, right? The European countries rely on America for security. They rely on it for leadership. They rely on America to set an example to the world for what a well-functioning Western democracy should look like. And a lot of the anxiety about this election in Europe stems from the fact that they're seeing this kind of chaos in American democracy and wondering if the city on a hill can still be looked to as an example. And that causes a lot of alarm among our friends in Europe.
Whew, the new piece is online now for The Atlantic. Staff writer McKay Coppins, thank you so much for writing the piece and being on the show this morning.